incredibly well.
Not an easy feat.
Welcome everybody back to the channel. We're going to be talking about... Hang on a second. Oh, that's so much better. I can actually see now. We're going to be talking about Major League Pickleball Columbus, and that's right, the big story. The Johns brothers, they withdrew from the event, citing the poor lighting conditions, player safety concerns. Were they justified in doing this? I'm going to give my opinion, and we're going to talk about what actually happened on the court outside of that drama. As always, I've updated all of our favorite charts and tables, including a few new ones. So with that, go ahead and drop me a like, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Drop a comment down below on what your take on this whole situation is, because we're just going to dive right into it. To start things off on Thursday, the Phoenix Flames got a Dreambreaker win over the Carolina Hogs, the St. Louis Shock got a 4-0 sweep over the Atlanta Bouncers, and the hometown Columbus Sliders picked up a Dreambreaker win over the Phoenix Flames. A few notes here is that Caitlin Christian of the Hogs unavailable this week, as well as CJ Klinger for the Columbus Sliders. I know, the hometown kid, the hometown team not available due to illness. Big disappointment. So those are going to be storylines to monitor going forward. But as I teased in the intro, up next, let's just dive right into it. Here's what happened on Friday morning. To start things off, the women actually get a win for Carolina. This has not been a strength, and when you factor in the fact that they also are playing one of their reserves, this is an incredible result and a good chance to get points for the Carolina Hogs. Unfortunately, Ben and Colin would drop the men's doubles game to Jaume Martinez-Vic and Todd Fote, and then facing a large deficit down 10-1 in mixed number one. Well, unfortunately, we are treated to the latest moment in what is an unfortunately long history of the Johns Bros just phoning it in at MLP.
Incredibly well.
Not an easy feat.
Being the keyboard warrior that I am, I immediately took to Twitter with this caption. Colin would go on to lose in mixed. The Bouncers would take a 3-1 regulation victory over the Hogs. And then it was announced that the John Bros have seen enough, or rather not seen enough, because they are withdrawing. They are citing poor lighting conditions, the inability to track the ball properly, causing safety concerns. So let's break this down. There are, in my opinion, kind of two key factors at play here. First of all, the Johns brothers, as I mentioned, have a history of this kind of behavior at MLP. They have a reputation as being bad teammates and that they don't always try. To prep for this segment, I went back and watched some clips from some podcasts after MLP Salt Lake of 2024, and I swear you could just run those podcasts right now and nobody would even notice.
I sat there as a fan, turning on pickleball like I always do, and saw a complete tank job, piss poor effort. You know, you have a guy going out there complaining about the lights and the venue, and that's the reason he doesn't try. But what about the effort level you put forth? The way you disrespected your teammates, you know, on national television, the way you rolled your eyes at them. Like, that's what needs to be addressed. That's the primary issue.
I mean, even Dave Fleming on the MLP studio show had to address the poor optics. He was the GM at the time.
What I'm not happy about is the optics. The fans have spoken, people have talked to me, and I can tell you right now that is going to get cleaned up before we play again in New York, because that just was not what we want to portray.
The other point is actually going to work in favor of the Johns Bros a little bit. They have been consistent in wanting better on-court conditions for players, specifically when it comes to lighting. You may recall, after that MLP Salt Lake event last year, we got the whole leaked email/text from Colin Johns where he aired out his long list of grievances and the reasons why he despises MLP, including point number 6 here, which is specifically about the lighting at that Pickler facility. It also does reference the DC MLP event where there literally were not lights outside. They played into the dusk and had to come back and wrap up play the next day. The Johns brothers actually have a company, Johns Design and Consulting, where they consult on opening of pickleball facilities across the country. The first JDC certified court is none other than the Austin Pickle Ranch, court number 4 there. It is certified by them. And one of the things they told my dad, who runs the Austin Pickle Ranch, is they needed better lighting on that court before they would certify it. The bottom line is these guys are nerds and they are very particular with the lighting on their pickleball courts indoors. Of course, this probably all goes back to the eye injury that is often cited around this subject. Ben Johns has some eye condition, makes it harder for him to track the ball indoors, so it makes sense he wants better lighting. And here's the thing, like, player safety should be of top concern. It has to be taken seriously. I mean, when all the players withdrew from the PPA singles because they didn't want to risk injury on the rollout courts, wasn't really too much of a controversy. I mean, I supported that decision. I think most people did. I was at the PPA Las Vegas event last year. I saw Annalie Waters roll her ankle on rollout courts on a platform in a Las Vegas casino ballroom with my own eyes. I saw Hurricane Tyra Black get her leg caught on the little signage on the side of the court. There are some valid concerns here about player safety. One counterpoint here would be just wear glasses, right? If you're worried about the lighting, you're worried about deflection off the paddle maybe, which is what we saw, actually. Can you really blame this on poor lighting? I mean, that ball's pretty close. It certainly wouldn't hurt to have better lighting. To me, this just kind of feels like one of those things that happens sometimes. But again, I'm just somehow a 4-0, so my opinion should probably be taken with a grain of salt here. And saying, hey, I know the lighting sucks, just wear glasses, probably isn't the best long-term approach. And of course, there are beyond player safety concerns, just quality of product concerns. If your players can't adequately see the ball, the quality of your product will probably suffer. Deckel Barr, who is a very close friend with the Johns Bros, released a statement seeming to come out in their support. He cites not only the safety concerns, but also establishing minimum win conditions. I mean, how many tournaments have we seen this year where these guys just look like 3-5s trying to hit an overhead smash in the wind? Drug testing. I mean, I'm not even going to go there right now. That's a whole other topic, but like, there are a lot of concerns that players have, and these should be taken seriously. If you take this whole situation at face value, having one of the best players in the game, one of the faces of the sport, stand up and demand better on-court conditions for the players, maybe standing up for those who can't do that themselves, that should be celebrated, right? I mean, that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I just can't take this at face value. To me, the history of their on-court actions at MLP, the way they carry themselves there, the way they interact with their teammates, it just doesn't sit right with me. If the greatest player on the planet can't even be bothered to try, why should I give a shit? Why should I tune in and watch? I mean, even if the playing conditions aren't up to your standards and you're worried about your safety, stick around and root for your team. If you're concerned about safety, wear glasses. I know it's not the best long-term solution, but like, you can wear glasses. If you're concerned about your safety, get your paddle up. I mean, come on. Clearly, there are some underlying frustrations here. Remember the list of grievances. Many of those have gone unaddressed. The Carolina Hogs, despite having a brand new spiffy logo, and honestly, it's kind of growing on me. I kind of like this whole vibe of the Hogs. I don't know why. I don't know if I'd want to be a Hog personally, but I think it kind of works. Anyway, the ownership of this team just hasn't built a successful roster around Ben. Despite spending the money to roster him, he's the most expensive player, they haven't really shown the willingness to put in the resources around him. At the end of the day, I just can't help but feel like Ben and Colin don't really care all that much about MLP. If these issues are being brought up by pretty much any other player, I think we're having a very different conversation. The way they have gone about raising these issues, just like they did last year, I just can't support that. At this point, it just feels like an excuse for bad behavior. So I'm going to hop off my soapbox now. And remember, as I'm recording this, I am still waiting to see what, if any, punishment will be handed down by the league onto the Carolina Hogs or to Ben and Colin Johns individually. Hey guys, look, I'm in a new shirt. That means it is now tomorrow relative to the Matty that you just saw. We now have official word from the league on what the punishment for the Johns Bros will be. And they have to forfeit their appearance fee according to the Dink. This is about $78,000 in total. Of course, most of that is from Ben. No additional fines or fees or suspensions or really any comment on the whole lack of effort issue, which is a little disappointing to see. So this was Zane Navratil's take. Like, at the end of the day, I would have liked to see more, but I can't really say that I'm surprised. And if they were approved as this message stated by the league, I mean, I don't really know what else we could have seen. It's just kind of crazy to me that, like, I guess any player can just not play any event, you know? I don't know. Remember last week we had some drama. We got this statement from the league. And this week, well, the official statement from MLP reads very differently. Clearly, this is an issue that MLP decided needed at least a little bit of professionalism with the press release. So anyways, I am now going to hop off my soapbox and take the advice of Connor Pardo and focus on what actually happened on the court. Moving on, the rest of the Friday action, the Columbus Sliders got a 3-1 win over the Chicago Slice, and sub Roscoe Bellamy played really well, honestly. By Real Clear Stats Player Impact Plus metric, which is just an at-a-glance metric showing who added the most value to a team, Roscoe Bellamy was the 5th-rated male player at this event. Now, it certainly helps when you're playing next to Andre Diescu, but still, when you bring in a sub and you get this kind of production, I mean, that's pretty remarkable. When that first waiver wire comes around, don't be surprised if somebody steals Roscoe for their own team. Elsewhere on Friday, the St. Louis Shock would drop the one and only game that they would lose of this entire event. That's right. Across their 6 matches, they would go on to win all 6 of those, the perfect 18 points, and they only dropped a single game. It was the men's doubles game against the Miami Pickleball Club. Orlando had themselves a perfect day, 4-0 and 4-0 against the depleted Hogs and the depleted Sliders. And when I say depleted Hogs, I really mean it now without the Johns Bros. They have Martin Emmerich and Ross Whitaker subbing in for the men. These are both league-provided subs, so based on our new rule, they're starting every single men's doubles game down 2-0. They are starting every single mixed doubles game down 1-0. And starting tomorrow, because Liz Trueluck, who is already a sub for Caitlin Christian, is no longer going to be available because of a conflict, they're going to bring in another league-provided sub. They'll be starting down 1-0 in women's, 2-0s in men's, 2-0 in one of the mixed, 1-0 in the other mixed. And should they make it to a Dream Breaker, just for good measure, they'll start down 3-0. I mean, talk about kicking a hog while it's down. This is the number of unique pairings that each MLP team has used through MLP Columbus. We have seen 11 unique partnerships suit up and take the court for the Hogs. This is insane. It is just spiraling out of control. On a much lighter note, we did get the New York Hustlers' first match win of the season, a 24-22 Dream Breaker victory over the Phoenix Flames. And moving on to Saturday, one thing we're going to talk about a little bit later, the Miami Pickleball Club, they might be a little bit better than we thought they were going to be heading into the season. They pick up 2 wins here, one in a Dream Breaker against the Slice, which is another team like them that has probably hoped to sneak into the playoffs. They also got a 3-1 win over Phoenix Flames. The Carolina Hogs got 1 point. They forced a Dream Breaker against the Chicago Slice, and what they were hoping would be a repeat of the miracle that Paris Todd pulled off last year at MLP when she won surrounded by 3 subs. Ultimately, though, Tammy Emmerich was not able to recreate the same magic. They did get 1 point, so they salvaged something out of this whole debacle. As we mentioned, St. Louis was dominant, 4-0 against the Sliders, 4-0 against the Squeeze. The Squeeze got a 3-1 win over the Bouncers, and the New York Hustlers, 3-1. That's a regulation win over the depleted Hogs. We also apparently did have another use of the dreaded B word. That's right.
We'll win again. We'll win again. She called me a bitch. She called me a bitch. You call me a bitch. What are we going to do? Whoa. Stay on that side.
Although in hindsight, I think this was just kind of a lighthearted, having fun, messing around moment more than anything. And rounding out the action here are the Sunday results. The Atlanta Bouncers with a Dream Breaker win over the Miami Pickleball Club. The Shock, again, perfect 8-0 in games on the day against the Flames and the New York Hustlers. The Squeeze beat the Slice in a Dream Breaker in what is a showdown between my 2 favorite logos in the entire league. The Miami Pickleball Club swept the Carolina Hogs. Again, it helps when you get all those bonus points. The Sliders swept the Bouncers. Orlando got a 3-1 victory over the Hustlers. And the Phoenix Flames in the final match of the event got a 3-2 Dream Breaker victory over the Chicago Slice. So let's take a look at the Columbus-only results. And this event is just going to be defined by the St. Louis Shock. It was kind of a weaker field. If you look at the teams that were there, we're missing Dallas, we're missing New Jersey, we're missing Texas, we're missing Brooklyn. But St. Louis and Orlando handled business, with Orlando only losing to St. Louis. The Shock got the full 3 points per match. Orlando Squeeze's 2.33 mark is pretty dang good. And the Miami Pickleball Club maybe is starting to look like they are just a step above the rest of the teams that were promoted from Challenger. Of all the teams so far this season, it's probably between them and Orlando as the biggest overachievers. Columbus took home 8 points in their 5 matches, which, you would have liked to do a little bit better given it was your event you were hosting. But without CJ Klinger, you've got to feel pretty good about salvaging all of the points that you could have. As we move further on down, teams like the Chicago Slice in this kind of weaker field, we've got to start having concerns about them, and the Phoenix Flames. The Bouncers, I don't really think we're expecting them to make the playoffs, but still, the New York Hustlers, this is honestly good for them. And then the Hogs, what else can we say? They only got 1 point in the 2 games that the Bros did play. They got 1 point in the 4 games that they didn't play. That's almost 25% of your season right there. Like, it's going to be tough to get back into the mix, even just to make the playoffs. Quick look at the men's doubles results from Columbus. Gabe Tardio and Hayden Patriquin, with an average point differential of 5.2, were the class of this event. Dylan Frazier and Fed Staxford also 5-1, 3.3 point differential, and Jay DeVilliers and Noe Cliff, the only team to take down Gabe and Hayden. Taking a look at women's doubles, we have a perfect 6-0 for Anna Bright and Kate Fahey, Callie Smith and Viv David 4-2. So remember the Slice men 2-4. Slice women 4-2. Leia Jansen and Paris Todd at 3-2 is good, but not great. All the way down the bottom, we have the New York Hustlers, Dami Schaefer and Helena Spiritus, which, I mean, 1-4 minus 6.4 is not good at all, but it's better than what happened in Orlando. Taking a look at mixed doubles, we've just got to talk about this right off the rip. Gabe Tardio and Kate Fahey going 6-0 is truly remarkable. They went 5-18 last year in the regular season. And look, they don't have to go 6-0 every event, but even just winning 50% of their matches would be a huge improvement over last year and would be enough to get them the 1 seed. Also, when you take a look at who they're actually playing, Andre Dasky and Paris Todd, Fed Staxford and Lacey Schneeman, Jesse Irvin and Tyson McGuffin, those are good wins, especially when you look at some of the margins in some of these victories. A little bit concerning is Andre and Paris at 2-3. Overall, not a super great event for Paris at 5-5. Maybe Andre just trying extra hard to carry a little more weight in men's. This spilled over into mix, who knows? And then all the way down at the very bottom, Jack Sock, Jeannie Bouchard, the tennis pros, 0-6. Phoenix doesn't need them to go 6-0. They just need them to not go 0-6. So here's what the new season standings look like after we roll in the Columbus results. We are sorting here by points per match. The Dallas Flash are still perfect. The St. Louis Shock, right on their heels, though, after a perfect event. The Orlando Squeeze, how about that? I mean, 3rd place right now. I definitely didn't see that coming. When we do dive in a little bit as to who they have actually played, I'm a little bit less impressed. Of the top 7 teams, they've only played the St. Louis Shock, who they lost to. They've played Brooklyn, who they lost to, and they played Columbus, who they beat. Again, Columbus was shorthanded. So they've gotten 3 points in the 3 matches against the top 7. They're 1-2. Against everybody else, they are 8-0 with 2 of those wins in a Dream Breaker, which is good for 22 points in those 8 matches. So maybe we need to see them do it against some of the better teams before we can really say that they are the 3rd best team. But for now, they're ahead of schedule. Here we've got another visualization of the standings, one of my favorites. It just shows match by match how many points did each team get in each match. We can see what we have to look forward to coming up at MLP Austin. 4 of the top 5 teams in terms of average points will be playing in that event. Additionally, Miami. I mean, look at Miami. A few things that we've got to be keeping an eye out for as the season progresses. The top 6 teams, you may recall, get a bye in the playoffs. Right now, the Columbus Sliders are 6th with 1.82 points per match. They're on pace for 45.5 points. So that is kind of our target cutoff line for getting a bye. And the target cutoff line right now for the playoffs, which are the top 10 teams, is the Chicago Sliders in 10th place, 1 point per match. That will be good for 25 points throughout the season. So Orlando already at 25 points. St. Louis, Columbus, they're pretty close to locking it up already. Here's the same chart, just showing cumulative points throughout the season by match number. And that's right, by the end of MLP Austin, Orlando and Miami will have finished 60% of their season. They'll have played 15 games, and we will still have only seen SoCal and LA play twice. It's crazy. Another visualization here on the x-axis going left to right. We are looking at the gender doubles average plus minus. That is the average point differential per game. And on the y-axis, top to bottom, we're looking at the mixed doubles average point differential. So if you're in the top right, like St. Louis Shock and Dallas Flash, you're very good at mixed and at gender doubles. We can see right now there are 6 teams that seem to have separated themselves. Maybe these will be our 6 playoff teams. It kind of tracks to me. And then we have another grouping here. The next 4 teams probably are other playoff teams. And then after that, it's a little bit tougher to imagine these teams cracking the playoffs with the way they've been playing so far, with the caveat that we really just haven't seen much from SoCal or Utah or LA for that matter. Here's the same data in a table. We're showing women's doubles, men's doubles, and mixed doubles, as well as some Dream Breaker data here. Now we move along and look at partnership data for the season, and hey, I'm in a different shirt because guess what? I forgot to hit record last night, so we're trying again tonight. So here we've got men's doubles for the entire season. We've got a team's record. We are sorting by the average point differentials across all the games. We've got to look at the team's duper, their opponent's duper, which is sort of my best proxy at a strength of schedule. And then we've got wins above expected and wins above average. Basically, the wins above expected is how well is this team performing relative to what duper thinks they should do based on their own duper and their opponent's duper. And wins above average is how well are they performing relative to how the average team would be expected to do against this schedule. And these numbers are all normalized across 25 games. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that if you look at Dylan Frazier and Federico Staxrud, they're performing at 9-2 based on their duper, their opponent's duper, almost exactly with what we should be expecting them to do. And over the course of a 25-game season, they're performing about 3 games better than the average team. Taking a look at Jay DeVilliers, Noe Cliff, they're also performing just about spot on with their expectations. However, they are performing about 3 games worse than the average team. Whenever we have a team like Donald Young and Zane Ford who just have very low dupers, it really does not expect much of them at all. So even at 2-5 over the course of 25 games, I think that this is significantly outperforming what they should be doing. However, it is certainly not on par with what the average team would be expected to do. And one thing I just want to point out here is how excited I am for MLP Austin, because we've got the Texas Ranchers, the Orlando Squeeze, Miami Pickleball Club, and the Dallas Flash all in attendance. These are 4 of the top 5 men's doubles teams in terms of point differential so far this season. And then we've got Will House and Zane Navratil also there, more than capable of stealing games off any of those teams if they're playing at their best. It is going to be an absolute bloodbath, and I cannot wait to see it. Moving on, we've got the same exact table, but this time we're looking at women's doubles. And a similar note, the MLP Austin field is pretty stacked for women's doubles as well. We do have the Dallas Flash, the Texas Ranchers, and the New Jersey Fives. Here we've got the top half of mixed doubles, and we have 4 partnerships that have yet to lose a match. And even though we do get the Flash versus New Jersey in MLP Austin, I would honestly be a little bit surprised if we did get that matchup between these 2 top teams, which is kind of a shame. I mean, it's good that teams have the option, to make these strategic lineup decisions. But man, I really wish we could just see the top teams go against the top teams. The fact that we've never gotten Annalie Waters against Ben Johnson mixed either at MLP is just another shame. We've talked a ton about the Shock mixed doubles as well, but how about Federico Staxrud and Lacey Schneemann at 8-3? We see Eric Ontons and Tina Pisnik towards the top of this list, but we have to turn the page before we get to Christian Alshon and Etta Tuionatoa. Of course, they've only played the 4 matches together. However, they were a little bit underwhelming in their debut event at Orlando, so we'll see if they can turn it around. And again, it is going to be a tough field. And moving further down the list, we touched on this already, but Jeannie Bouchard and Jack Sock, 0-8, simply not going to get it done. Todd Fott and Victoria DeMuzio, not too much is expected of this team, but anytime you have a lineup like this, it's just really going to drag you down in the standings, unless, of course, you're the New Jersey Fives and you have that Annalie Waters factor who can kind of make up for that. Almost feels like a guaranteed win to offset, not a guaranteed loss, but, it's a tough lineup for you. We'll take a quick look at some individual data, and then we're going to take a look at my personal favorite chart. So here we've got the top 12 players in terms of point differential so far this season. Again, you'll see a lot of Dallas Flash players, a lot of St. Louis Shock players on here. No surprise to see Annalie Waters here, Tina Pisnik, Eric Ontons, and then Will House and Federico Staxrud rounding out the top 12 here. If I'm going too fast on any of these 2, please be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, where I will be sharing most of, if not all of these charts. All the way down in 50th place by average point differential so far across the 8 games, we do have Ben Johns. And of course, we know how expensive he is. This also doesn't even factor in the added cost of him withdrawing from this event. It literally cost your team tangible points in each of the subsequent matches. And so with that, like I promised, here's my favorite chart. On the x-axis, we have a player's cost. This is either their keeper cost, which again is 1/2 of the price that was paid in the 2024 auction draft, or the price that they win for in the 2025 auction draft. And again, on the y-axis, we have average point differential across every single game that a player has played so far this season. Now, I do just want to mention that we're never going to get the complete picture with this methodology. We're looking at the average point differential in what is a doubles game of pickleball, and then we're using this to, analyze individual performances. it's just not the complete picture. For example, Ben Johns, despite having a negative point differential in the first event in Orlando, he was actually the #1 male player by Real Clear Stats Player Impact Plus metric. So again, this isn't a perfect system. I don't even know if it's a good system, but it's a lot of fun. And at the end of the day, it's all we have. And there is still, some value. You do have to score more points than your opponents if you want to win games. I know, right? Crazy. And I've given a name to some of these zones here. We'll start off with the obvious, which is Ben Johns Island. He is just all alone out there, That's just not where you want to be. On the top right, we have Anna Bright and Annalie Waters, very high performers that are worth the premium. At the very top, a special shout out to Georgia Johnson. And once again, even though she does have the highest point differential for the Dallas Flash, in the Real Clear Stats data, she actually has a lower Player Impact Plus score than Tyra Black and J.W. Johnson. Last week when I was pulling clips, when Georgia had the incredible 42-point scoring run, I wanted to kind of put together a montage, but there wasn't really all that many winners that Georgia Johnson was hitting. She was playing incredibly clean. She was setting up her teammates well. She wasn't making mistakes. After watching the film, I was slightly more impressed by Hurricane Tyra Black and J.W. Johnson's play, and the data did support that. And I'm really not trying to take anything away from Georgia Johnson, even though the Dallas Flash are my rivals and I do hate them. I mean, the results speak for herself. She pickled like 50 teams last week. Still, it's just another way that we are missing a little bit of nuance with this methodology. Moving down below, we have the great value tier. We've got the rest of the St. Louis Shock. We've got JW, we've got Tyra Black, Tina Pisnick and Eric Onsens are hanging out in here, as well as Will Howes, who has been a standout alongside Annalie Waters. Just slightly below this tier, we have the good value tier. These players are a little bit on the pricey side. They're certainly not cheap, and they all do have a positive average point differential for the season. Even a player like Andre Diascu, who's maybe getting a little bit close to that Ben Johns Island. Keep in mind, he did just play 5 games next to a sub. And a little bit lower, we've got the same kind of pricing tier here where they're not cheap, they're not super expensive, but they're not quite performing at the same level. All these players have a negative average point differential. We've got the entire Chicago slice in this little sub zone, which I'm calling the Pizza Hut. It's like a little 555 discount deal going on here. I'm not quite sure what they're up to, but keep an eye on them. We've also got Jack Sock and Jeannie Bouchard. They're 0-8 as a partnership, and while they're having some success in gender doubles alongside Tyson McGuffin and Jesse Irvin, and at that price, you're just not getting a whole lot of bang for your buck, although they are having a whole lot of fun on that team. It would just be more fun if they were winning more. And then along the left, we just have all the cheap players. A lot of these players were promoted from Challenger League, so they have $0 associated with them, or they were added in the later rounds of the MLP free agency auction draft. You may recall the New York Hustlers were busy in the later rounds of that auction draft. They didn't spend a whole lot of money, and it kind of shows. They are cheap, and the results have been bad. I do want to zoom into just on this $0 to $100,000 range because it's kind of hard to tell what the hell is going on in here. So if you want a closer look, go ahead and pause here. That brings us to power rankings time. On the left here, we've got my Orlando tier list, and updated on the right is my Columbus tier list, as well as my actual power rankings. So the first thing I've done is I haven't actually changed up the order of the top 3 teams, but I've bumped New Jersey down to the A tier, even though they didn't play. It's just so clear that the Shock and the Flash are just on a separate tier than everybody else, whether you look at point differential, whether you look at their average points per match. I mean, any way you want to slice it up, these two teams stand alone right now. That, of course, is subject to change at MLP Austin, where, again, we have the Flash, we have New Jersey, we have Texas, we have Orlando, we have Miami. It's going to be a strong field. And speaking of Texas, I actually did bump them up ahead of Columbus. Maybe this wasn't quite fair. Again, Columbus did have a sub, but I've just seen enough shakiness from Andre and Paris together. And you know what? I'm allowed to be a homer. Moving into the B tier, we have one of our biggest movers. We have the Orlando Squeeze, who I bumped up from the number 8 spot to the number 6 spot. In hindsight, maybe they should still be at number 7 behind Brooklyn. Brooklyn does have a head-to-head win over them. All that said, at the end of the day, I'm just riding with the hot hand. And based on their positioning in the league table, I think this is a defensible spot for them. I'm leaving Brooklyn and LA in the B tier. We just need to see these teams play more matches before we make any sweeping conclusions, although I feel pretty confident about their placement right now. Moving on to the C tier, we do have the single biggest mover of this entire power ranking list. We have Miami jumping up to number 9. I had them at number 13 last week, but I think I've seen enough from them. Their men look pretty dangerous. Their women are holding up much better than I thought they would. So I really think this team is going to end up in the playoffs, at least if they keep playing the way they are. It's going to be a very, very big test for them at MLP Austin. They do kind of feel like the odd team out in terms of the quality of all the other teams being there, just like a step above. They, of course, are the only team promoted from Challenger that will be at this event, so it's going to be interesting to see how they hold up. In my 10th spot, which I guess you can equate to my final playoff spot, we do have the Chicago Slice. It's been pretty underwhelming from them. I mean, this was the event where you really wanted to try to rack up a lot of points, and they lost 3 Dream Breakers to Miami, to Orlando, to Phoenix. They lost in regulation to Columbus, who again didn't have CJ Klinger. They did win a Dream Breaker against the severely depleted Carolina Hogs. You probably want to try to get the full 3 points there. Everybody else managed it. And then they did take home the full 3 points against Atlanta. And of course, the first event was a little bit of a rough outing, but it was against 2 very good teams. So this team might just need a little more time to come together and gel. In the D tier, we have Atlanta at 11. And despite the win over the Carolina Hogs, who still had the Johns Bros at this point. In fact, if you see Todd Fote at the next MLP event, be sure to buy him a beer. This was a really big chance to rack up some points, and they let a lot of opportunities slip by. In the same D tier, we do have the Phoenix Flames, who I do think could find their way into the playoffs again. We've talked about it, you just can't have an 0-8 mixed doubles line. In the E tier, moving up 3 spots from 16 to 13, we have the New York Hustlers. You know what? I maybe was being kind of a dick about this team, and it really wasn't directed at any of the players, really just the way ownership had a good team, sold everybody, and then didn't really spend much money in the draft to replenish. I just wasn't a fan of that, and I kind of thought this team was just going to be the punching bag that we could kind of crack jokes about, but you know what? They earned a little bit of respect. They won in a Dream Breaker, they won in regulation, they've got 5 points. So this team, I've taken them out of the cellar. I put them into the 13th spot. Staying steady at 14 and 15 are Utah and SoCal. We just haven't seen enough of them to do anything else. And then down in the F tier, maybe this is a gross overreaction, I don't know, but I'm putting them in timeout. It's just hard to say what we're going to see from this team going forward, especially now that Ben and Colin missed 4 matches and they had the penalty points in each of the games. They just dug a severe hole. This event was about 25% of their season. And when Ben and Colin do presumably return to MLP in the next time they're in action, until I see them bring it, I just don't have any faith in this team. The last thing to look at is the results from Matty's Ultimate MLP Pick'em Invitational. Todd Boss leads the way. He is 15-1 on the year. Alex Lance from the Kitchen is in second place with 14-2 record. And then, hey, look at me in third place, tied with Eric Tice and Jane from the Obsessed with Pickleball podcast. Go check her out if you haven't yet. And bringing up the rear, we have Hayshay, Will Doughton of Pickleball.com, Jim Kloss, and Johnny 5.0. And if you want to get in on some picking action, my friend Andy has been running Fantasy Pickleball. It's not really Fantasy Pickleball at this point. It's just a bunch of random people making picks for every single game. But it's a ton of fun. I'll share the link before MLP Austin if you want in on that. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for tuning in.